My beloved sisters and brothers, let's pause for a moment and think about why the time of Fajr is so unique. It's not just another slot in the daily prayer timetable. It carries with it a special weight, a spiritual gravity that most of us don't take the time to appreciate. When the Quran describes the Fajr recitation as being witnessed, scholars explain that this is a time when angels record not only your prayer, but also the state of your heart and your commitment to Allah at the very start of the day. So Fajr isn't only about waking up, performing 2 rakahs and going back to bed. It's a conscious declaration that the first act of your day will be to align yourself with your Creator. The Prophet Muhammad made a powerful dua, asking Allah to place barakah, blessing, in the early hours of the day. This isn't just a poetic phrase. It's a reality that has been experienced by generations of Muslims throughout history. Think about it, when you dedicate those first quiet moments after Fajr to meaningful activity, whether that's Quran recitation, dhikr, study, or even beginning your work, you find that your day expands. Your mind is clearer, your heart feels lighter, and somehow you are able to achieve more in less time. That is the barakah the Prophet spoke about. Now, from a psychological perspective, this makes a lot of sense. Modern science tells us that the human brain is at its sharpest in the early morning hours. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for focus, decision, making, and creativity, is most active then. So if we align the Prophet's dua with what science now shows us, we see a perfect harmony between divine wisdom and human psychology. It's as though Allah is telling us, this time is designed for your growth, your clarity, and your success. But too often, instead of stepping into that opportunity, we shut it down by rushing back to bed. There is also a deeper philosophical layer here. The way you start your day sets the rhythm for the entire day. If you begin it consciously, with discipline and purpose, it ripples into everything that follows. If, on the other hand, you treat the early hours casually, with indifference, it becomes easier for the rest of the day to slip into mediocrity. Fajr is not simply about 2 rakahs. It is about training your soul to recognize that the first hours belong to Allah, and through Him, the rest of the day will fall into place. And perhaps this is why so many people who are successful, not only spiritually but also in worldly terms, guard their mornings jealously. They don't waste them. They understand that when the world is quiet and the mind is fresh, that's when breakthroughs happen, whether in worship, reflection, or creative work. So, the secret isn't just in praying Fajr, it's in what you choose to do after it. Will you embrace the blessings Allah has placed in those hours, or will you let them slip away under the blanket of sleep? The choice is yours, and it is in that choice that your day, and perhaps your destiny, is shaped. When we look at what happens immediately after Fajr, most people fall into one of 2 habits. They either remain awake and engage in something meaningful, or they quickly retreat back under the blanket to continue their sleep. Now, on the surface, sleeping again may feel harmless. After all, isn't it natural to feel drowsy at that time? But what we often overlook is the subtle impact it has on both our spiritual lives and our psychological state. This isn't about whether sleep itself is good or bad. It's about the timing of it and the mindset behind it. Islamic tradition places immense value on the hours after Fajr. The Prophet and his companions were known to stay awake, to remember Allah, to start their work, and to set the tone for the day. Many scholars have advised against sleeping immediately after Fajr, not because it is forbidden, but because of what is lost when you do so. Those early hours are filled with opportunities to remember Allah, to make dua that carries more weight, to engage in dhikr when the world is quiet, and to begin the day with a sense of direction and discipline. When a person chooses sleep over these moments, they're not committing a sin, but they are walking away from a treasure chest left wide open in front of them. From a psychological point of view, this is fascinating. Waking up for Fajr is already a test of willpower. You have conquered your nafs by resisting the comfort of sleep in obedience to Allah. But if you immediately give in to the same sleep right after, you lose part of that momentum. It's like running to the starting line of a race, but instead of running forward, you sit down on the track. You had the energy, the spiritual adrenaline, and the divine support, but you allowed it to fade away. Over time, this can cultivate a subtle habit of procrastination, the tendency to delay, to avoid, to say later instead of now. Philosophically, we can think of this as a reflection of how we treat life itself. Life, like the morning, is limited. There are windows of opportunity that, once missed, cannot be regained. The sun rises whether you are awake or asleep. The question is, will you rise with it, or will you bury yourself in heedlessness? Every morning becomes a metaphor for your entire existence. If you treat the early hours casually, you risk treating your whole life casually. And if you honor those hours, you're training yourself to honor every precious moment Allah has given you. Of course, there are situations where a person genuinely needs rest. Perhaps they work night shifts, or they've had little sleep. Islam is balanced, and scholars remind us that in such cases, it is permissible, even necessary, to rest after Fajr. But the key issue here is intentionality. Are you sleeping out of genuine need, or are you simply surrendering to habit and laziness? The reality is simple. Every morning after Fajr, you are standing at a fork in the road. One path leads to productivity, clarity, and barakah. The other leads to lost time, wasted energy, and missed opportunities. The choice you make will silently shape your entire day. So ask yourself, when Fajr ends and the angels have recorded your prayer, do you honor the blessings of that hour, or do you sleep them away? One of the most overlooked aspects of staying awake after Fajr is the profound benefit it brings to your body and mind. We often think of worship and health as two separate fields, but in reality they complement one another. When Allah places barakah in the early hours, it's not only a spiritual blessing, it's also a physical and psychological one. Science is beginning to echo what our faith has been teaching us for centuries. The way you use your mornings has a direct effect on your health, your energy, and even your mood throughout the day. Take sunlight, for example. When you remain awake after Fajr, you are present to witness the gradual light of dawn turning into sunrise. Exposure to natural morning light does something remarkable. It resets your circadian rhythm, the internal clock that governs your sleep, energy levels, and hormone balance. A few minutes of early sunlight can increase serotonin, which improves mood and focus, and regulates melatonin, which ensures you sleep better at night. So ironically, those who sleep after Fajr often complain of disturbed sleep patterns later in the day or at night, not realizing they are missing out on the natural alignment that morning light provides. Mentally, those hours are golden. The brain is like a clean slate in the morning, uncluttered by the noise and stress that accumulate as the day unfolds. Neurologists explain that our cognitive abilities, our capacity to focus, solve problems, and think creatively, are at their peak in the early hours. If you use this time for reading Quran, studying, planning your day, or even pursuing creative work, you will notice how much more effective you become. What may take you 2 hours in the afternoon could take you half an hour in the morning. This is not just productivity, it's barakah manifesting in your time. On a deeper level, staying awake after Fajr cultivates discipline. It teaches your body and soul that life is not just about comfort, it's about purpose. When you resist the pull of your bed and instead step into activity, you strengthen your willpower. That discipline doesn't remain confined to the morning, it spills into every area of your life. You become more consistent in your worship, more focused in your work, and more deliberate in your choices. It's as if Allah rewards you not only with blessings for that moment, but with a character that is sharper and stronger throughout the day. And perhaps this is why so many highly effective people, whether scholars, leaders, or thinkers, value their mornings so much. They understand that the hours after Fajr are not ordinary hours. They are charged with clarity, with energy, and with a kind of sacred quietness that the rest of the day simply doesn't offer. So if you truly care about your health, your productivity, and your sense of peace, protect those hours. Don't trade them for a little extra sleep that leaves you more tired in the long run. Remember, every sunrise is not just the start of a new day. It's an invitation from Allah to rise, to grow, and to live with barakah. Now let's talk about what actually happens when we make it a habit to sleep right after Fajr. Many people don't realize that this simple decision can set off a chain reaction that shapes the entire day. On the surface, it feels like just another nap. but in reality, it often leads to a kind of sluggishness that lingers for hours. You wake up groggy, unmotivated, and somehow already behind before the day has even started. Psychologists call this sleep inertia, the fogginess you feel when you interrupt your natural sleep cycles. Spiritually, though, it's more than just fog, it's missed opportunity. Think about it. After completing Fajr, your soul is elevated. You've just responded to the call of Allah at the earliest hour, proving to yourself that you can rise above comfort. That spiritual momentum is powerful, but it's also fragile. If you immediately dive back into sleep, you dampen that momentum. Instead of carrying it forward into Quran, dhikr, or even productive worldly work, you put it on pause, and often, once paused, it doesn't resume with the same energy. You wake up hours later, only to find that the world has already moved on without you. There's also the matter of time itself. The hours after sunrise are precious, not only spiritually, but practically. This is when your mind is sharpest, when businesses are opening, when opportunities begin to unfold. If you sleep through it, you've lost the prime hours of clarity and potential, and here's the irony: many people complain that they don't have enough time in the day. Yet they've already surrendered the most valuable portion of it to unnecessary sleep. Time is a currency that never refunds itself, and every morning you oversleep, you are spending from your account without realizing what you've lost. Philosophically, this is a question of how we value life. To waste the early hours is to live passively, allowing life to slip past while you lie unconscious. It's like owning fertile land, but choosing not to plant anything in it. Later, when harvest time comes, you wonder why your field is empty. Every morning after Fajr is a fertile field. Plant it with worship, with reflection, with purposeful action, and you will reap blessings throughout the day. Leave it barren, and you'll face the emptiness that follows. Some even miss the Ishraq prayer, a prayer the Prophet emphasized as carrying immense reward, simply because they chose to sleep away those hours. This is not about guilt, it's about awareness. The truth is, your decision after Fajr can either open the door to blessings or quietly close it. So ask yourself, are you living in rhythm with Barakah, or are you letting laziness rob you of it? Because every time you choose the comfort of a pillow over the blessings of those hours, you're making a silent trade, and it's a trade that leaves you with less energy, less clarity, and less opportunity. The day doesn't wait for you, it moves forward. The question is, will you move forward with it? It's very important at this stage to bring balance to the discussion. Islam is not a religion of extremes, and it never demands that you sacrifice your health or well-being in the name of rigid practices. When we talk about the drawbacks of sleeping after Fajr, we are not suggesting that it is haram or sinful. Rather, we are highlighting what is often lost when one makes it a habit. The scholars throughout history have always been careful to explain that sleep, in and of itself, is a blessing from Allah. If your body genuinely needs rest, because you've been working through the night, or you've had very little sleep, then going back to bed after Fajr is not only permissible, it may be necessary for your health. But here is where the distinction lies. Are you sleeping out of need or out of negligence? The Prophet taught us that the body has a right over us. To deny it rest when it desperately requires it is an imbalance. Yet, to indulge it when it does not truly need it is also an imbalance. Wisdom lies in recognizing which category you fall into. If you've been awake working late hours, perhaps providing for your family or fulfilling other responsibilities, then your sleep after Fajr is an act of self-care, and it allows you to function later in the day. In this case, the barakah of Fajr is not lost because you have already aligned your intention with responsibility. However, if you are someone who has slept sufficiently through the night and still, out of habit or laziness, you slip back into bed, then it becomes a missed opportunity. Not a sin, but a loss, and the difference between sin and loss is crucial. A sin requires repentance, but a loss simply requires awareness and a decision to do better next time. The purpose of discussing this matter is not to burden people with guilt, but to invite them to mindfulness. To say, pay attention to your mornings, don't treat them casually, because they are a gift. From a psychological standpoint, this balance is also healthy. Sleep researchers emphasize that oversleeping can be just as harmful as undersleeping. Too much fragmented sleep often leaves the body more fatigued, not less. When you strike the right balance, resting when needed, staying awake when not, you protect both your body and your spirit. And from a philosophical angle, this balance reflects the very ethos of Islam: moderation, purpose, and conscious living. So the real question is not, can I sleep after Fajr, but rather, should I sleep after Fajr, given my circumstances and my goals? If you need it, take it. But if you don't, then choose the path of Barakah instead, because life is too short to let your best hours slip by without meaning. And perhaps the deepest truth here is this: every morning after Fajr is a test of sincerity. Do you honor the blessing of time, or do you take it for granted? The answer will quietly shape not only your day, but also your character. So if sleeping after Fajr often leads to missed blessings, wasted time, or sluggishness, what should we be doing instead? The answer isn't complicated. It's about building small but intentional habits that make those early hours meaningful. You don't need to spend them in rigid routines or force yourself into activities you dread. What matters is that you fill them with something that nourishes your soul, your mind, or your body. That way, you transform those quiet moments into a springboard for the entire day. One of the most powerful alternatives is reciting the Quran. There's a reason why so many scholars would dedicate their mornings to tilawah. At that hour, your heart is calmer, your mind is uncluttered, and the words of Allah sink deeper. Even a few pages after Fajr can set a spiritual tone that carries you through the chaos of the day. Combine that with morning dhikr, the prophetic supplications that shield you from harm and invite blessings, and you will feel as though you are walking into the day under divine protection. But it's not only about worship. There are worldly alternatives that are equally valuable when done with the right intention. Use the time to plan your day with clarity instead of rushing later in stress. Engage in some physical exercise, even if it's a simple walk, and let your body absorb the freshness of the morning air. Studies show that a short burst of movement in the morning increases energy levels and sharpens focus for hours. From an Islamic perspective, even these simple actions become acts of worship if you do them to maintain the health Allah entrusted you with. Another overlooked alternative is learning. The early morning is a golden time for seeking knowledge, whether sacred or worldly. Read, listen to a lecture, or reflect on something you've been trying to understand. When you dedicate that time to growth, you'll notice that your retention and comprehension are far greater than at any other point of the day. That's Barakah at work again, achieving more in less time with less effort. And here's the key: you don't have to remain awake for hours. Even staying up for 30 to 60 minutes with purposeful activity before taking a short power nap can completely shift your day. The idea is not to deprive yourself of rest, but to make sure you don't miss out on the spiritual and psychological richness of that early period. With balance, you can enjoy both, the barakah of productivity and the refreshment of rest. So really, it comes down to a conscious choice. Will you allow those golden hours to slip away, or will you claim them as your own? The world is quieter, the distractions are fewer, and Allah's blessings are greater in that time. To trade all of that for a little extra sleep is to undervalue a gift that was placed directly in your hands. Every morning after Fajr, the door of opportunity opens wide. Don't stand in front of it half asleep. Step through it with intention, and you'll find that the rest of your day begins to fall into place.